It's me again. I'm back. I wanted to come on and address some of the patterns of the energetic themes that have been coming across my path via sessions in the last, I'd say, week to 10 days. It's been so many similar, very distinguishable things that people are going through, and as they're moving through them, they think that they're the only ones experiencing it. And I guess part of the purpose of this video is to explain that you're not the only one. And sometimes just having that information can be a reassurance and give comfort to know that this is something that at least a collective are going through right now, and is part of this sifting and moving and this migration process that is occurring from moving out of the inverted, distorted reality and those multiple levels and layers that have been accumulated and compacted ever since we kind of arrived here on this planet. And there's a great unraveling that's happening within the dynamics of individuals, but I also want to address what's happening in relationships right now, because it is very strange and confusing and very discombobulating times with the energetics that are at play. And I've always said this because this tends to be a theme that comes up approximately once or twice a year. We go through these up-leveling processes. So when you think about it from this perspective, when we go through a breakdown to breakthrough on an individual level, what normally happens is all our stuff comes up. There's a lot of energies that you feel like you're swimming in a soup, or you've been put through the washing machine of emotional, mental, and energetic, Olympics, if you will. And you feel like you get pulled apart. You feel like everything's breaking down. It's overwhelming. It feels hopeless. It's exhausting. And all of a sudden, you start to break through that very, very fine threshold. And all of a sudden, you rebuild yourself in a way that is so much more aligned or soul aligned to who you are. And you can then very clearly see the new trajectory, and things start to realign in a rebuilding way that was so much better than what it was before. And we go through these sort of death and rebirth cycles continually as we go through the incorporation of more of our own consciousness. This is a process I talk about all the time, but what occurs? There are pockets that happen once or twice a year where this happens in relationships. And when I talk about relationships, yes, often I'm referring to romantic partners, counterparts, divine counterparts, twin souls, whatever name you like on it, but I'm talking about high level frequency soul compatibility matches. And most of the time it has the romantic context to it, but not always. Sometimes it can be a collaboration partner, a business partner, or like a best friend that is a complete soul match, soul frequency match. And there's many, many components to what is at play. So I'm going to try and break it down bit by bit by bit. First of all, we're going through an evolution of relationship templates. So just as the process that I explained that happens on individual, this is now happening in tandem, in twos, where everything's coming up for evaluation. Everything feels like it's seemingly falling apart. I've had so many people say to me, what is going on? I feel like my relationship feels like it's over, it's ending, it's done. Or these patterns keep coming up and we're looping them and we can't seem to break through. And then it becomes nasty, it becomes uncomfortable. I almost feel like I'm being attacked. This is not my partner. I don't understand what's happening. This is out of character. I can tell you what's happening. There are some serious interference energies at play. that are kind of creating a resistance threshold that essentially, if you look at it from the highest perspective, it kind of creates a slingshot effect when you're able to rise through it and over the other side. But because we're coming to the end of grand cycles as well, if you have carried a pattern that hasn't been resolved, especially through a specific relationship dynamic, that will be coming up very, very loudly. If you have certain patterns in relationship to connections, like your own relationship patterns, they will be coming up because they want to dissolve and clear. We are not just moving into a new harmonic reality. The migration has begun, and I'll break down a little bit of my dream message from the other night to describe in more detail of how that came across in the feeling and sensation. But we are moving into the alignment of right relationship that has not been seated on this planet, if ever, in this way, in this particular way. However, soul frequency matches know what it's like to be in partnership, in right relationship, in vibrational alignment and harmonic resonance. We came here because we wanted to experience that in physicality in this lifetime, and also through that process we wanted to change the nature of the game of relationships for humanity. So we decided, let's say a pair, you and another, decided that you're going to incarnate here on this planet. Having such a pure frequency connection and match that exists beyond this density. You partner, you pair, you do missions together, you have shared purpose together, you have a whole soul expression of lineage. Then you come here and you get thrown into the web of entrapment of this matrix. Often the hijacking happens very early on, womb, or very early on in linear years, in infancy, in childhood, which creates all these webbed layers, energetic, interwoven suits, if you will, of expressions that aren't your natural organic resonance. What is happening now is the unveiling, the unraveling. So it's going to be messy. It's going to be bringing up unresolved childhood wounds. Torturous, but it's whatever patterns haven't been addressed, they're coming up. But what I want to talk about is often in relationships, there are unseen energies that exacerbate these, that are at play, that make people stuck and looping. Because these unseen energies, whether that they be entities or implants or attachments, they gain a lot of benefit from keeping people in separation, in disappointment, in sadness, in anger, in conflict. There's a lot of looshing that happens, So don't let it win. Don't let them win. Don't let those frequencies that want to keep humanity suppressed and controlled, whether that be individually or through your relationships, don't give in to that. It's time to override it and to dissolve it. And it's naturally happening anyway. But what people are feeling right now, and I always say this, that there is points in time where there are a lot of relationships that do go through the reevaluation that they have come to an end. You are the master of your own relationship, so I or no one else can really tell you what is happening. Only your heart and soul truly, truly knows. But hopefully sharing this information might trigger the ahas of the piece of information that you need at this moment. So the general consensus is the sadness, the hopelessness, the exhaustion, the raw and tenderness of the emotions, and the feeling of this never-ending cycle of, being able to get your head above water, like energetically speaking, getting into a good alignment, and then something coming in and throwing you off center. Especially when it comes to these powerful relationship couples and these pairings. What my observation is, what's happening in real time, is a number of things. So I covered the fact that there are energies or entities that very, very specifically like to meddle and interfere with these type of relationships because there is some gain and benefit. That needs to go first and foremost, because that just makes everything compounded that much harder to come back into a space of love or unity, done individually and together. There has been a lot of darkness surfacing. We had such huge influxes of light come through January and early February with the solar flares, but just the influxes of the unmeasurable energies. That made everyone jump up an octave. That increased sensitivity, awareness, telepathy, abilities, heightened sensitivity, and connectivity in partnership. What then occurred from that in sequence of events is there was a lot of lashback, a lot of, we reached a whole new frequency bandwidth. We'd pierced through some sort of a glass ceiling membrane. Collectively, the front runners, all of you, pushed through that. We opened that. It allows whole new light, a filtering of reality to come through. Then what happens is the influx of what kicks up, the dust that kicks up, the entity, well, it's not dust, it's entities, it's interference energies, it's convoluted, distorted relationship, distorted sexuality, and then obviously the Epstein files that dropped. And that has created such a level of distorted frequency in the collective atmosphere. It's created people to feel a lot of discomfort, and I addressed this on the last video, so I'm not going to go into that. But even if you're not down a rabbit hole looking at that information, the energy is in the collective field. So if you're sensitive, you're most likely picking that up, and it's making you feel scattered. It's making you feel very mentally heavy. It's probably making you hyper emotional. There's a lot of people who even have, clean energy that are like the level of hypervigilance in energetic hygiene right now is like up there with the most important thing, because even if you are a clean vessel, the level that we are transmuting and that is being absorbed, that's coming up, it's very intense and it's very disturbing. And I can see people who are of the light, who hold beautiful frequencies of light, being very unsettled by this, not just from the content, from the energies. Also the energies that are very heightened are of scarcity. And so I see just from that of in the collective field, and what everyone's focused on is creating a disresonance with heart coherence, going into scarcity and lack, and all the distorted relationship templates of toxic relationship and distorted sexuality is coming to the forefront, and all those beings and entities are having they're having a great old time. So I've had a lot of clearing of that in the last 10 days. And it's been quite heavy for the sensitive soul. So I want to address and speak to that. When we go through these pockets of reevaluation of everything's up for re-examining around relationships, even if you're in a healthy relationship, there's still levels of evaluation that go on. But if you're sensitive, sometimes you can take on too much of the energies that are floating through the collective field, and you start to apply it to your own relationship and overanalyze things, and it's because of the energies, not because of what is actually happening in real time. So there's a level of distorted energy playing out. So I always say to people, when we go through these pockets, it's so important. If you're in a healthy relationship, the smallest things can get amplified and blown out of proportion because of the energies we're moving through. So it's really important to come back into your own center, come back into your, as much as you can, your center, your ground piece, and ask, is this mine? Am I picking up from my partner? Am I picking up from my friend? Am I picking up from the collective? Because, yes, I have notes. Sorry, I wanted to try and make sure I cover everything that's relevant for right now. So I just wanted to put it out there and say that you're not alone. If you felt like you're about to lose everything, or this is unexpected, that like the other shoe's going to drop, and you're kind of bracing for what's coming next, that is the consensus feeling at the moment amongst those that I've been working intimately and close with through sessions and through clients reaching out. So I felt it was my responsibility to come on here and try my best to break down it, then describe what I've been relaying back and forth, so that all of you could perhaps benefit, to try and make sense, to put language around what is taking place if you don't have those networks or resources to go to. So we're ending out big cycles, these loops, these patterns, these unconscious connections of ways of relating in relationship are got to go, and they're coming up in real time. So it's very, very confusing. It's very, very, heightened and emotionally and all over the place. And because of that energy and influx and what we're sort of moving through, bear with me while we open a window. There's a lot of excess energies that are external, and it's a very, very good skill set to have, to know when an energy is your own pattern or trauma, or if there is an outside influence energy, aka an attachment or interference energy. It has a very, very different energetic signature to it. Now, yes, it is true that because of our patterns or our wounding, we attract that. But what happens is, when we have the external energy, it makes it 10 times worse to deal with, or to get to the core. We've got to remove layers before we can actually get to what is it that you're processing and working on. So that light that I've been talking about, that really powerful light blue frequency, that dissolves all the chaotic. So work with that. Now, why is all of this happening? I mean, the why is so important. A number of reasons. Yes. Part of this is because our souls want to expand into their most organic and pure frequency, not just with ourselves, but in conscious relationship. That is what is pushing through. That is what is on the horizon. That is where the miracles want to come through, to make these conscious connections real and tangible, and to show what is possible. When two people who hold a frequency of unconditional love and higher resonance can override the programming, the conditioning, the entrapment, the control matrix, and the enslavery. And it's through these couples, these pairs create such a quantum ripple. That's why there has been so much targeting. That's why there's been so much interference. But we are literally in real time bursting through and breaking down all of this. I believe that we've come through with templates to specifically move through as a part of our soul agreement with each other to become the best version of ourselves individually, so that we can be in the deliverance of the highest expression of relationship dynamic. But it's also part of a collective agreement on a soul level as part of our mission, which is so powerful and so important. The multidimensional convoluted aspect, and what I've been witnessing that I feel is an integral part of this, is you probably heard me talk a few times now about the matrix pods. Over this past weekend, I went through my own experiences, I went through my own witnessing, and I had many people reach out and share with me their experience in real time of what is happening. And this is about the pairs breaking free out of the matrix pods, those corded energies that have kept them in disillusionment, looping, disappointment, unconsciousness, unawakened, not remembering, on a soul level. And when we talk about this interfacing of what occurs when there is conflict, and it's not a clean conflict, it's a conflict that becomes projectile vomit, essentially, of a really nasty frequency that comes through couples, and it creates so much disharmony that fries out another person's nervous system. That is not natural, and that is not organic. That is interference, as each individual and couple is trying to break free. There's like handler energetic energies that create a backlash, and it creates more disturbance. This is what we have to override and overcome. We have to clock it for what it is and return back into a centered space, and be able to come and approach it from a different way. Come and approach it from a calm, centered manner of two people talking out and identifying that there are other energetics at play. And come back to the remembrance of the love, the commitment to one another on a human level, but on a soul level, of why we came here in the first place. And know that this is a process that's so much bigger than just two people. This is about an entire construct dismantling to bring about a whole new paradigm, a whole new reality that's being birthed through our actions and through our collective actions. So once again, over the weekend, there was a very highlighted frequency of multidimensional warring playing out. Yeah, Animals are very, very sensitive to these energies. I've noticed that even if I mention those words or talk about his transmuting style, his love language of energy transmute is hacking. So it's like it's bringing up all the crap, all the gunk. So what happens when we hit those really intense peaks? There is this friction energy of conflict that's happening out multidimensionally, especially those who have fractals of consciousness in other realities playing different roles. That is part of the multidimensional cleanup. When that energy occurs, which was happening, there were so many people involved from the multidimensional perspective that were basically bringing down these matrix pods and these bases and a lot of these corrupt, distorted pockets of reality, what I like to call in inverted timelines. There was a full implosion of that, and what I believe is happening is there is a collapsing of old timelines, specifically in relation to high level soul dynamic relationships. It's been bleeding through my dream space quite a bit. When those energies peak, it's playing out in the macro, so often it plays out in the micro, in your own personal world and energy and dynamic. And that's where things get amplified. That's where we as a collective, we're all playing our part to break through those energies. And this has been ongoing now for a few weeks, and I feel like it's going to continue for a few more weeks. So it's being conscious of it and doing things differently, approaching things differently, approaching things with compassion, with love. Because when people are defensive or dismissive or become angry or aggressive, it's a wounded part of them, generally speaking, that wants to be acknowledged. And when it can be approached with love and tenderness, that creates a complete change. So as you can tell, there's a lot happening in that space, and it's not just on the human level, it's on a multi-dimensional level. I'm pausing for a moment because I felt like there was another really important key. Yes. So I had this dream, as I mentioned in my previous post, of the picture, the image of people and animals, buildings and homes in grayscale, and then the continuation became like, it was very pastel, very light, very iridescent color, and people were literally walking from one to the other. They were migrating from one reality to another. And as I was witnessing and watching, it was like shifting. You know, it's almost like those sand things. You know, they move slight, you know, tipping up and like a seesaw, and it's like all moving from one side to another. It was a full migration happening. The message that I got with it was, this is a progress report. The shift is in progress, and it may be slower than what many of you would have liked, but the reason for that was so that your friends and family to move across with the least amount of disruption to their consciousness, to their psyche, to their human processing. But now the acceleration is in progress. It's no longer a slow, steady. It's now going to be a much more accelerated pace. So because of that, what I believe is occurring when there is disruptions in relationship where we feel disconnected or we feel like something's ending. Yes, there is a version that is ending, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship itself is ending. So it's really good to not misinterpret the energies, because our mind can only process what we have a context for, not what we're moving into that we don't have context for. So it's like we're exiting out of a version of reality of ourselves. We're exiting out of a version of reality in how we relate to another, to reconnect at a higher place. So while all this craziness has been going on, I've also been privy to the higher reality that's playing out in that new reality, where relationships are coming together in miraculous ways. They're coming together in ways that we couldn't even comprehend, that defy logic, that defy reality as we know it. And that's what we're moving into. And that's why it feels so uncomfortable right now. We're almost resetting the template of relationships. So, in conjunction with all of that at play, take it easy. Be gentle with yourself. Seek support. Connect with me or someone that you feel comfortable with that can help hold your hand through these shifts and changes, that can help you with the energetic support, that can help you with the intuitive support to validate what your heart may tell you, but your mind's all chaotic and confused. I think we're going to be stepping into, it feels like right now, if people are going on the pause button in relationships, and I say that across the board, if people are having a sacred pause, as some people call it, if we're not relating or connecting and it feels uncomfortable, but it doesn't make logical sense, if you think about grayscale and pastel reality, it's oscillating. We are oscillating. So in one moment you could be there and they could be there. That's why it's not connecting. One moment you could both be there and in full harmony and alignment. And then the next minute you're both there and it's like chaos. So remember that as the oscillation scale, because we will flip-flop back and forth for a time being until we solidify in here. And that's what's actually occurring. We're embodying more soul frequency to be in this reality. It's a transformation that happens through us and within us, in our closest connections and relationships, and then filters to the world. And that's why most of us came. So remember the big picture when we're going through the harder or harsher experiences. I'm sending much love to you. I'd love to hear in the comment section how you're feeling, how you're navigating. Wishing everyone, obviously, a happy Firehorse year with all this creative, fiery, really accelerated energy. But know that there's a lot in the mix, and I hope that this video has broken down and explained some of how I perceive it happening that might help you make greater sense of it. And I would love to connect with you through this eclipse season, so feel free to connect. Book a soul session, book one of the various sessions that I have on offer, and let's help you embody as much soul frequency as you can for your connection and perhaps also with another. So much love to you, and I will connect with you soon.